It's Frederik, it's Jasper, and Chris. But please, maybe if you can introduce yourself really quickly, and then we'll get this panel going. Frederik.
Oh, right. Ooh, oof. Yeah, that's a lot of sound in here. Frederik Lofthagen. I run a company called Interel. We were born in Belgium about 30 years ago, so we'll be celebrating with a big party next year. Anyway, that's the plan. We are a firm that mainly focuses on public affairs. I'm going to see if I can try to bring a perspective on that into the panel discussion today. Mind you, we do communication, as we've heard also quite a bit from previous panels. For us, an important mantra, certainly internally and also in our conversations with clients, is to talk about integrated communications, because ultimately many of our clients are essentially looking for solutions, which would suggest that they have a problem, and indeed many times they do. And they don't really differentiate between strategic communication, public affairs, PR, whatever. They're very much in the mindset of fix it, and we deploy whatever resources, capabilities, expertise, and services to do exactly that, and we don't ask too many questions about what and how you qualify those different components. We operate in Belgium, Brussels, EU, which is a strong focus for us. We have offices in Paris, in London, and also in Berlin. And recently we opened an office in Delhi, so I was very interested to hear about the Indian market earlier. And that's about it.
My name is Jasper Eyears. I run a firm called Another Company in Mexico City. We specialize in premium consumer products. We've been in the market 8 years. We started off as a traditional public relations firm that's been pulled and pushed and suggested to our clients that they take us in other directions. We now offer a wide range of services, and this year, in December, we'll open services in Chile, Colombia, Panama, and most of the region, everywhere apart from Brazil, as far as I can tell, from going south from Mexico. We're an office of 60 people, and we have a lot of fun.
So my name's Chris McCafferty. I'm the founder of Kaper PR. We're based in London, independent PR firm out of London. We're the relative new boys of the group. We've actually only been going just over 2 years, so it's quite flattering to be on a panel and to be in a room with so many agency founders and directors and owners. We are very much an independent PR firm that is living some of that vision that Paul talked about in his introduction. So we talk about the fact that we operate at the crossroads of traditional PR, digital PR, social, experiential, and content creation. And I think many of you, I'm sure, are doing that as well, but we're firm believers that when we can bring those things together, that we can create truly, powerful campaigns that create sales or change perceptions or change attitudes. One of the mistakes I think people often make with that integrated vision, just very quickly, is that they try and do that in one day. And they're still in that campaign mindset. I'm going to tick all of those boxes and do all of those things, all of those different disciplines in one day. We're really in the business of trying to stretch out that narratives to the brands that we work for and tell storytelling over a longer period of time. The final piece, just on us, is we were very deliberately launched as a joint venture between myself and the partners of an ad agency. So as PRs, we've often held the ad world at a kind of arm's length and had a bit of a distrust of the advertising world. I don't think clients buy that anymore. I think that thinking is completely broken. We have a third sister company who is a content company, so they make lots of advertising, but they make lots of branded content as well. And so what those joint ventures mean that we have skills that we can pull down the planning skills of an ad agency, the creative skills of content producers, and we believe that makes our campaigns that much faster, that much more effective, and really that much more integrated.
Great. All right. I had a number of questions here that maybe we could discuss on. It's always hard to get that social media slot and talking about the new stuff. So we're not going to focus on the channels. I think there was a good point in the panel before us on just looking at this as different channels, but rather what the implementation implications for our industry. And one thing is that a couple of years back when with the rise of social media, everyone started talking about, oh, you can't really control your brand anymore, it's out there, it's in the hands of the consumers, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, you see people that argue, well, today the reputation is based on your actions, given, you know, this age of transparency. So where do you stand? Is it that you have control, or is it that you don't have control now that we have social media? Anyone want to kick that off?
I think it's. I think the point of view, my point of view specifically here is, I think you can always retain control if you're credible with your brand and your values of your brand are intact. We've just lived the elections in Mexico City, which presented a perfect case example of one person losing their brand control, when the obvious winner of the campaign stood up against, it stood up in a student in one of the most important universities of Mexico City to make some claims that were essentially false, and was caught out by a group of students. And then his spin was that these weren't actually students, were just operators for the other party, haggling, at which point 131 of these students put out a video which caused such a polemic that within 3 days there was 150,000 students protesting against the obvious lies of this presidential candidate. I think this is a perfect case example. Your brand is very safe when your values are very safe. Your brand is open to immense scrutiny at an incredible rate when you're not solid.
Good answer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that completely. I think there's definitely a sense where there is a degree of control that's lost through social media. Clearly, anybody can comment, everybody can post, everybody can create content. But yes, you are in control of your brand in social media. You have to decide exactly what the role of social media is going to be for your brand. Is it customer service? Is it brand building? You know, is it a sales channel? Is it all of those things? And then what are your strategies to cope with that channel? It really is no different than deciding what your broader, you know, what your TV strategy is, what your print strategy is. I think absolutely you're still in control of it. It's about putting the right tools in place, processes and people to make sure that, yes, you remain in control. I mean, that's not to say that you shouldn't embrace some of the chaos of social media and embrace some of the great creative and feedback pieces that can come from that channel.
But the question I have, it's brand, so can you control your brand, but also I think perhaps another question is, can you control your message? And I think there I would say that it's perhaps become a bit more challenging to be able to do that in the sort of the old-fashioned sense of perhaps the word, the way perhaps we've seen PR in the past. And I think, you know, can you control the conversation? You can certainly steer the conversation. I think, you know, you always have the opportunity to go in and ensure that your message and your narrative that you've defined gets introduced in that conversation. But I would argue that I think it's a little bit more difficult and a little bit more challenging, perhaps, to keep the conversation, if you like, on message, right, as compared to the past. Again, I said that I'll try to bring a public affairs perspective on this, and I'm proud to announce we just hired a digital head. For us, that was a big deal, and I think it was a big deal in of itself. But you know, some would argue, well, you know, now you should have done that like 2 years ago. The reality is that we weren't ready for it. More specifically, our clients weren't ready for it. So I think if you're talking about public affairs and the shift in public affairs there, it's an enormous change actually, which is happening as we speak, and that we've had to embrace. And in that context, we have to think beyond our typical stakeholders and the conversations that are happening, which raises an additional point in terms of complexity, is that, you know, if you're talking about public affairs, a lot of people will say, well, you know, you need to speak to the right decision makers and so on. Now you do need to speak to the people who form a view, then air that view, and then that will be taken up by those decisions makers, and they will formulate their answer and the way forward and their policies on the basis of that. And that had added complexity to the conversation, and certainly to the kinds of campaigns that we now need to do. The good news for us in that context is, of course, is that it's going to take more of an effort to influence policy than it did perhaps in the past.
Right. Yeah, actually, I mean, I come from advertising, but I hang up with the corporate and public affairs guys because I tend to learn most of them. And so I went to the #1 crisis guy at our firm, and he said, you know, I'm not a PR guy, I'm a PT guy, like a personal trainer, like, because it's not about makeup. You really have to work with the client, and the client's body has to be firmer. I mean, on your point, it's not what, and your everyone's points here. It's not what you say, it's what you do, and usually you're in control of that. So
it does definitely demand new skill sets, though. You know, that old PR sat there as gatekeeper and a yes and no person. That skill set is still there, but you have to add to that. So, for example, if you haven't got the ability to create a video that responds to the student's video that's criticising your campaign, then you're nowhere. You know, and those skills in our industry didn't exist, you know, X number of years ago. And I think that's where things are really changing. That you've got to have those skills within your business. The other great thing that's driving this is the speed of change, right? And that you have to be able to respond very, very fast. And if you don't have that set up in your business, if you don't have those skills, then, you know, I don't think you are in control. You're going to start.
But I think it's more than respond fast. It's almost be proactive in your response.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you know, to
definitely.
predict what problem may arise and seed the plan before it actually arises.
right, I'm going to switch slide. All right, this study came out recently from one of the big networks suggesting that now on a global scale, close to half of all consumers prefer to do business with companies that aligns with their views and values. Obviously, there are lots of differences here in marketplaces and in demographic groups, but still this is something to be considered, right? Wouldn't you say? How does this affect our industry?
I was wondering if there's anyone from Hill and Knowlton in the audience who could, because I think we had a good debate around whether actually the study was right or not. 50% seems incredibly high to me, and particularly with the sorts of brands that we're working with at Kaper, which tend to be, you know, consumer brands where it's consumer products, and I'm not sure everyone is there yet. And if I think about this question in relation to our clients, I think some of our bigger clients are definitely there. So yeah, we do a lot of work with Unilever, and they've come up a couple of times today, and you know, their sustainable living strategy is absolutely driving everything that business does. But some of our smaller clients, I don't think are there yet, and I think that's a big challenge for us, is to explain to them that there is, you know, half of their audience are not going to buy from them if they don't buy into their values. There's no hiding place for that. You're going to lose half your potential client base, half your potential customers. But as a PR consultancy, we need to take them through that process, because they're 100% product focused still. They're not value focused yet.
No?
I mean, speaking in Mexico specifically, in certain consumer groups, it's very apparent that people are looking for particular values in their brands. But I think from our perspective, we're seeing a lot of boundaries being opened and new brands coming into Mexico in the last year, where the brands are simply seeing Mexico as yet another market, yet another point of expansion on their global map. What they haven't necessarily done, and what the public outlook is forcing them to do, is honestly adapt from communication ideals down to a Mexican level before they simply suppose that the Mexican public or their target consumer was going to adapt to an American way of thinking or European way of thinking. There's a burgeoning middle class. There's a huge creative set coming out. I think it's 34% of the population is below the age of 27. You know, they are having to now adapt and create Mexican ideals that talk to a Mexican consumer specifically to be able to penetrate and get the growth and statistics that they're looking for.
I mean, this is obviously a huge challenge. If you choose to believe that, it's 50%, and we can debate that perhaps, but
do you think it's growing? Is this a trend?
I mean, I think it's true, but I mean, I think it's more in terms of incumbent on a company to make sure, or an organization to make sure that they're true to their own values. Somewhere along the lines, I would think that the majority, if not more, of companies and organizations have sound values. And if you stick to sound values, I think you're going to have a compelling story to tell your customers. If, on the other hand, the challenge is that you put to yourself is to try to please every single customer you have. If you have a few million of them, of which 50% are sensitive to, you know, how you talk to them or the values you project to them, that seems to me a fairly daunting task. So I would reverse it and I say you need to make sure that you have sound values that are in keeping with time and in keeping with the way you want to project yourself and your products and all the rest of it, and stick to them. Then I think you'll have a chance to survive.
Right. Still, I would say that you've heard stuff like the last year, so don't build brands, take stands, and you've seen also really concrete cases like in the US, for example, like Google and Pixar really backs gay marriage while Chick-fil-A, you know, supports the biblical definition of marriage. And certainly you have a discussion there forcing people to take stands in societal issues. And I think, isn't it obvious that social media, with all the transparency and that open channel to the clients, will force them to take stands in questions that are somewhat controversial in moving on?
Well, there are obviously different kinds of issues. If you're talking about gay marriage, for instance, that's one set of, you know, I'm a bit surprised you mentioned this example earlier, that someone would take a stand along those lines. But then you have the sort of issues that people talk about in terms of where you source your products and, you know, child labor and many things like that, where clearly, you know, if you are in that space as a producer or as a consumer product company, say, you need to be extremely sensitive to that. And I think also, arguably, I'd say I come back to my earlier point about values. It's values towards your customers, but it's also values towards your own internal stakeholders. Right. You know, employees do care about these things as well. If you hire 100,000, we were talking about talent and talent shortage earlier, you know, you need to play to that part as well. And if you do that and you do a decent job, I think, you know, you're going to do okay.
Yeah.
But do you think, I mean, this is a question to the panel, but how do you think the values of these companies have evolved during the last 5 or 10 years to adapt to this? Because I can guarantee that Unilever's values were not what they are today 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a good question. And obviously, I mean, we had a good conversation earlier about employee-created, you know, workplace, about, and also on the talent topic. I talked to one of the big CEOs in Sweden for a global company, said that I'm now involved in the corporate rep because talent is my main focus, and in order to get talent, I need to get the reputation of this company fixed, because that's the #1 question that they have. So, yeah, maybe we can come back to that. I felt I killed the conversation myself. I'm going to show you this is a piece from Cannes, probably the best, one of the best pieces in Cannes this year. And so we're going to look at this case. We didn't do this, unfortunately. We're going to look at the case film, and then I'm going to show you a couple of examples on other cases, and we're going to try to understand what they have in common.
Hi, I'm Graham. And this is my twin brother.
Right, a pretty good case. So I looked around for other cases, because that's what I do when I look at cases. I try to understand what is it in this case that could be a strategy for me moving forward. What can I take from this, extract from this case, and apply it to another client? So, and then I found these cases. This is a firm that cleans the window of a children's hospital here in the US, and they dress up as Spider-Man while they do it. And the one in the middle is a Brazilian campaign. It's called Pee in the Shower. It's when you shower, you should also pee in the shower to save water, so you don't have to flush the toilet afterwards. And I mean, it's in certain cities in Brazil and other parts of the world, you know, water is a really crucial topic, and if every citizen in the whole, you know, city could save a flush, that's a That's a lot of water. And the last one is Jogs for Dogs. It's, you know, people are running these days. In Stockholm, everyone is running for some reason. And there's a lot of dogs out there, but they're not necessarily in the same household. So whenever you feel like going out for a run, you can check if there's any dogs in the neighborhood that you can bring for your run. So it's Jogs for Dogs. So what's the common theme here? Anyone?
I have a point of view on this. I mean, I come from an agency, or I have an agency that specializes in building collaborations, and I see these 4 projects that we have in front of us, and to me it's habit collaboration. It's how do we build our brands, or the brands that we manage, into the habits of our consumers, so it becomes an adoptable project. Why? Because it's something that we already do. It's something that we don't have to change our focus. We don't have to change anything that we're already doing. I mean, in the case here, we're all cleaning our windows. We're all going to the bathroom. We're all taking, well, if we have dogs or run, we're all running or taking our dogs for a walk. Or in the case of we're cutting ourselves, we're always going to damage ourselves. So how can we integrate our brands and our messaging and then turn that into an incredibly powerful piece of content that can generate a global impact incredibly quickly, as we saw with the marrow piece. I think for me, it's habit collaboration.
I think they're all brilliant, right? They're all absolutely fantastic, and the way that they're subverting the everyday and putting a brand message into that is just absolutely fantastic. There's a strange but hopefully interesting parallel that I'll make. We work with a venture capital company that only invests in mobile technology. And they'll only invest in mobile technologies of things that people do every single day, because they know that that app has then got a chance of being on the person's home screen on their smartphone every day, every day, every day, every day. Otherwise, we're not interested. And I just think that's really interesting, a good parallel here, where how you take the everyday, you subvert it, you put creativity into it, and then you've got a campaign that people almost can't help but get involved in. And if you wrap it, as you say, in the right creativity, then you've got an incredibly powerful campaign.
Yeah, I mean, really good answers. I mean, I'm not the judge of that, but I just felt it was good answers. But the thing is that the thing I was thinking about was that we're often faced with a challenge of changing behavior, and it's so hard. It's so hard to change behaviors. I mean, if you ask your partner, please, I want you to put on your underwear before you put on your socks in the morning, that will take months, because it's really hard to change behavior. But this is a really brilliant strategy. We're not going to change behavior. We're going to add a positive side effect to an existing behavior. And I think this is a really brilliant strategy, and it's coming from social media, because we all heard the term multitasking, right? Multitasking, I can't really pronounce it, multitasking. And my kids, they're playing this network game, and they're chatting at the same time, and they're having their smartphone, blah, blah, you know the drill. This is really multitasking in real life. And I think it's important to see all these new behaviors that's coming from social media, and the fact that we're using media in a new way. We shouldn't look on, now I'm giving a speech, I'm sorry. But
that's okay.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, never mind. It's
we'll
an
just hang
interesting,
out.
yeah, sorry. I'll go to the next one. Yeah, we heard the term peak oil, right? The oil is running out. We're running out of oil, peak oil. You heard the term? Yeah. Going to all the award shows the last year or couple of years, going back 5 years, everything was about QR codes or AR, like all these new special techniques and technologies, and everything was so fancy. And the things that gets rewarded like in Cannes last year, it's more really simple things, really like Twitter campaigns, but they're attached to a really important issue or something substantial. So I'm just proposing this. Have we reached peak tech? And what do you say?
I think we have, and we were the last adopter, probably.
Yeah.
As I said, just recently we hired digital head and so on. But I think the reason we did it is because we could very clearly see, and certainly in a public affairs context, that this now matches together. This is not about funk or consumer behaviors or whatever it is. It actually is part of our mainstream of how we do things. And I would have thought, and I would like to think certainly, that substance has always been at the core of everything we do. And I'm not only talking about public affairs, I'm talking about PR generally. And we look, with great curiosity and interest into new ways of getting the message out, creating conversations, dialogue, and what have you. And I'm sure there will be new QR things or whatever that's going to be hot for a while and then become mainstream. I think the comment I would make there is that it just happens a lot quicker nowadays. And I think our rate and our ability to embrace new technologies has increased significantly as well over the last only couple of years, I would add.
There's a temptation, certainly in the international awards, probably all awards, to reward the new, right? And reward the fad, and whoever gets first onto Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be, that wins an award just because it's seen as pushing the boundaries. But yeah, I think we're probably getting beyond that. I'm sure there'll be another wave of that when a new wave of technology comes through, because that is a failing of the award ceremonies, I think. But the word that I guess I picked out of this question was the sense of substance. And we talk a lot in our business about sort of lazy, linear, commoditized PR, which is just focused on generating coverage in that old school clippings book that you drop on the desk. Sorry, just not good enough. The campaigns have to have more substance. They have to have greater depth. They have to have greater planning. They have to have greater creativity. Otherwise, they're not going to achieve the commercial outcomes that we want to for our clients. I think everybody in this room, I would expect, is looking to be part of this wave of PR that is more strategic, it's more business focused, it's more outcome focused. And you can't just do that by chasing the latest technology. You have to have more substance.
Right.
Yeah, I feel, speaking from the brands that we manage, we get a lot of push down from our clients to adopt whatever is the new piece of digital communication, if it's augmented reality or QR codes. And since last year, we've actually always pushed back against adopting any of these technologies, because it seems that our consumers, when we register back on their feedback on certain campaigns that have used QR codes, that have used augmented reality, that the fad or the fad of using this stuff isn't getting the penetration that we necessarily want. Everyone still at the end of the day is more interested in the written, the photo, the video, and the art piece of the content that's actually being positioned. And if that's solid, then they'll buy into it, they'll read into it, they'll follow it, they'll build on it. And it's not necessarily on the crazy investment that we've had to put into a window display in a store in a shopping mall.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me it feels like Twitter just broke. I mean, nowadays it feels really relevant to make Twitter campaigns or having Twitter as one of the core channels for promoting a message or a service or something. But yeah, it's like the first 5 years of Twitter we could have done without. All right, so we have three gentlemen here. We have Klaus Schwab, the founder of Davos. We have Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, and Paul Polman of Unilever. So what's the common theme here? I mean, it's really easy for me since I put these slides together and I know it's really important. But I'm going to give it to you anyway. Or I can tell you what I was thinking about.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about soft power and the fact that, this Davos, they talked about talentism rather than capitalism. And Starbucks obviously is promoting this campaign against unemployment in the US. Unilever is building their growth strategy on sustainability. So we're seeing companies, organizations, people that are really business oriented. They're building their growth strategy or their thinking, business thinking on sustainability and soft power. Do you see what I see, or is this just three random examples?
No, I if I pick up on that one, I completely agree. I mean, I suppose the common theme for me is that they're all visionaries in the sense that they're all prepared to really take a risk and get out there. And thinking about the specific topic that we're talking about today and social media and what that means to us as comms professionals, what I like about it is that there's a degree of accountability to it. You know, there is no hiding place again for these guys. They've all gone out. You know, they've set, you know, the Unilever Sustainable Living Programme has 50 specific goals, all of which are time-bound, all of which they're reporting on regularly. There is, you know, and all of their customers, whether that be, you know, governments, whether that be their customers or the end user, as it were, they'll all pick up on it. And I like the fact that they're still brave enough to get out there and nail their colours to the mast and, you know, go for it. And that for me makes them real visionaries and really brave.
Right. Anything to add, or shall I go to the next slide?
Well, if you want
we
to
have like 2 minutes left, so.
All right.
But I mean,
okay,
this
so
is an important thing, right?
It is important.
Sustainability, and I mean the whole new CSR thing, that it's not really added on top like a nice to have, but really the foundation that you build from. I mean, it's about business these days. It's not about, you know, sending a Christmas card to someone, feeling good about it, right?
Yeah.
No?
I think we're beyond the Christmas card stage now,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. Well, they go out by email, I suppose, nowadays. Or maybe not.
This one, and to your point earlier on, Chris, that would you agree to this, that our industry is going from creating awareness that generates value to creating value that generates awareness? Is this true? Is this relevant, or is this just nice wording?
I think we heard from an earlier panel, what do we mean by value? So I think you kind of need to perhaps expand on what kind of value is it that we're talking about. I mean, I'd say yes, but I would have said yes 2 years ago to that as well.
Yeah, maybe you've always been there.
I mean, yeah.
But wouldn't you say that our industry used to be about creating awareness? And now, like, take for example the case film we saw with the marrow donor program. That's really about creating value.
Yeah.
They're solving a problem,
Yeah.
and then they get tons of reach and awareness or clippings from that, because they provide such strong content, right?
I think there's one important point here, that value doesn't have to necessarily be defined in that way. For example, creating more bone marrow donations. You know, value can be entertainment. Lots of the brands that we work with, you know, if they make great content that makes people laugh and means they spend 90 seconds with them and they click through to their website, start to follow them on Twitter, that's value. That's really, really good news. You look at the Red Bull Stratos event, which just, you know, blew us all away. Amazing, amazing, amazing value. Essentially, it's entertainment. So value doesn't have to always be about, you know, a CSR value. It can be really quite simple, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think it is the final nail in the coffin. I think, you know, as an agency perspective, we have to be able to produce or create fantastic content, be able to compete with our competitors, firstly. You know, if not, our message is just going to disappear underneath the wealth of a Red Bull, for example. You know, I know that from my perspective and what I compete with in my territory, we put more time now into creating projects and creating bespoke projects for our brands than we do in communicating them.
Right.
It's the single defining investment cost that we have, the new investment cost that we have.
That's interesting. Sorry, we're out of time. I talked too much. Could we have a question from the audience, or should I just leave the stage? Yeah. All right, one question. Yes.
Your question about the taking a stand.
Yes.
There's a panel tomorrow that we're doing on breakout brands, which is where we're saying brands that want to put the customer first and form emotional connections. And I was going to suggest, since you were struggling a little with the taking a stand, that we've done original research that we're going to show tomorrow, that customers don't necessarily want you to take a stand. They just want to have the conversation. They want to know that they can have a conversation with you and that you're a forum that they can relate to. I'm not so sure that I would agree that you have to take a stand, but I think that there is something to our research indicates that people do want to have an emotional connection with the brands they do business with. And they want to feel like they're listening, that there's a feedback loop that isn't just one way.
Right.
That's a value in itself, isn't it? The ability to listen and the ability to open yourself up, and that wasn't necessarily there in all companies before. So yeah, I think that sounds great.
Thank you so much. I guess if there's any other questions, we can handle that, side of the stage. Sorry.